Hiya, Jenny. I'm delighted to be chatting with a fellow writer, novels and poems. Myself and Steve Evans here.
Hi, Steve. Hi, Terry. Good to be talking to you. Glad we could make this work.
Excellent.
Hi, Jenny. I believe your friends call you Jenny, so we'll go with Jenny if that's all right with you.
That is perfectly all right. Jennifer is for my students and my publisher. Friends get Jenny.
Students say not miss. Oh well, okay.
Yeah.
No, anyway, so I was going to say, how's life in Ireland? But you're not in Ireland. You were at some point, and we'll come back to that.
Yes,
but you're in Texas, aren't you? So how's the weather
Yes.
this morning in Texas? How's it treating you?
Very Irish, actually, this morning. It is gray and rainy and cool. It's about, oh Lord, I have to recalibrate to Celsius. I would say it's about 50 degrees, but that would be hellacious. About 10, yeah. It's about 10, 12 degrees here this morning. Yeah. And Gray and Drippy, the cats, keep going to the door and asking to go outside and then getting very upset when we haven't fixed the weather yet for them. So,
well, any consolation? It's very like here. We're about 9 degrees today, and very cloudy and very similar, to be honest with you. So, Anyway, going back to Ireland, you did live there not so long ago, just a couple of years ago, probably 3 years ago. You left there, did you?
About 2 years ago now, yes. So I lived in Ireland from 2015 until late 22. Yes, late 2022. I was doing my master's in creative writing at UCC, and then I rolled that almost immediately into a PhD at UCC, and then stayed on an extra year because, like, my last year was COVID year, and who wants to have my going away from Ireland could not be locked down. And so I stayed and worked at the university a little bit longer. And then now I'm back home in Texas.
Okay. All makes sense. So did you go there specifically to do your PhD and your MA in creative writing, or was it purely, it just happened that way around?
I would like to say that there was some very specific planning, that I picked Cork out specifically, but it was really a lot of chance and serendipity. There's a program here in the US called the Fulbright Scholarship Program that's specifically to pay for American students to study abroad and to be, good academic ambassadors, whatever. And there was one to do this creative writing program at UCC. And so that was the first time that I had heard of Cork, much less UCC, University College Cork. Or the writing program therein. And I applied for the Fulbright and didn't get it. So I applied to the university directly anyway, and got in for the master's, received a small scholarship. And so I packed up my life and said, it's a year. If I hate it, it's just a year. Like, I can do anything for 12 months, basically. And I did not hate it. I, the opposite of hated it. It was an absolutely transformative experience. And I found out that there was a professor at UCC studying in the field that I knew I wanted to do my PhD in. And so I turned up at his office one day and said, "You don't know it yet, but we're going to be best friends." And I studied under him for my PhD, and I just loved it. A truly wonderful time in my life.
Did you travel around much? I stayed in from arriving at Cork Airport down to Kinsale on the sort of the south of the island.
Yeah.
Did you ever travel to that place?
I've been to Kinsale. Kinsale's lovely.
It is.
Yeah. Gorgeous
hotel,
little
I think
town.
I stayed in. A fishing village, really, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, it is. So I've been all over Ireland itself. I'm sad to say that while I was over in Ireland, I did not do as much travel in Europe as I had hoped. My sister studied in Scotland, and she and her friends were always traveling, going over to Europe for the weekend and doing this and that. And I didn't do much of that, but I really, really got to know Ireland. I have friends all over the country. I spent a lot of time in West Cork, actually, which is not terribly far from Kinsale, working for the West Cork Literary Festival, that sort of thing. I spent quite a bit of time traveling around Ireland, meeting people, attending events, that sort of thing. It was wonderful. Yes.
Okay. You mentioned the festival there. Is that how you got to know Sarah O'Donovan? That's how we sort of introduced her together.
Yeah.
She wrote the book Within You, Without You.
Yes, that is how Sarah and I got to know each other. I've worked with the festival since 2016, actually.
Okay.
Part of this master's that I did was that you have to do a placement within the literary community somehow. Some people ran writing contests or workshops or that sort of thing. And I did a placement with the festival. I went down for the week. I worked as a volunteer, and then I've just kept going back. And Sarah, of course, has been involved with the festival with West Cork Music for many years and is wonderful, is integral to that festival, I think. And so that's how she and I got to know each other. And I have been really enjoying her book. It's sad to say I have not been reading it as consistently as I wish I had. I have been, but I really am so happy that she finally got it published and that it's out in the world. She's lovely. Yeah.
I totally agree. Yeah.
Is there any horse racing links there as well with Sarah, or is that?
So not the way that Sarah has a background with stables and that sort of thing. Like I was raised around horses. I mean, the girl from Texas was raised around horses. What? We have pasture pets for all intents and purposes. My mom's Western riding horses, trail horses, that sort of thing. So that's another really interesting thing, is that I was raised in a far more casual horse culture, I guess I could say. And so seeing these stables and this behind the scenes work, I've been to horse races, but never really thought about the kind of training that goes into it and all the different levels from the jockeys on down that Sarah is kind of giving us a glimpse into with Within You, Without You. Yeah. And the way that that might work somewhere other than the United States, because I don't also necessarily associate England or Ireland with horse racing, but obviously there's a huge and very long-standing horse racing tradition, stable tradition there. Yeah. And so that's been really interesting in comparing and contrasting just in my own mind and my own experiences.
So moving on to your books then, Heretic, the Hellmage Chronicles, Book 1. Now, yes. That's a fantasy horror. Is that a standalone book, or have you got any more planned in the series? Are you working on part 2 or not? Or
so I am working on part 2, and there is a third one vaguely on a spreadsheet somewhere that I keep finding and re-losing and finding again. But I am about 30,000 words into a draft of the second Heretic that I'm very excited about. Heretic itself is obviously the first one in this dark fantasy adventure romance thing. It's a little bit bloody, it's a little bit scary, it's a little bit sexy, but it was my lockdown project, actually. We were all kind of climbing the walls and not able to go anywhere, and we were afraid to be around people, afraid to touch things. Like, I was one of the people who was wiping down my groceries once I got them back to the house type thing, which was ridiculous. I mean, now we look back on that and we say, what were we thinking? So I wrote this book about these people who, well, are not afraid to get very physical in a variety of ways, but also we couldn't travel anywhere, and so they travel the world, and we couldn't really talk to people, and so they talk to a lot of people. And there's this big mystery at the heart of it that they're trying to solve, and they do solve it. And just like with COVID, there was this big horrifying mystery with COVID that we were all afraid, and brilliant people all over the world were working together to solve it. But we didn't know yet at that point when it would be solved, if it would be solved in a satisfying way. And so writing my own feelings, channeling my own feelings of uncertainty and doubt, and giving a satisfying resolution to that mystery was a real driving force in that novel for me.
What is a Hellmage? What is that? That's a great name, by the way. I love that.
Yeah, it's a superb name, isn't it? Whatever it means.
Sounds out.
So in this world, we've got it is urban fantasy in the sense that our world exists, and then there's another world just beside it of magic and darkness and power, and it is peopled by these mages who are immortal beings, fueled by various elements. You can be an earth mage or a water mage or a fire mage, etc. But there are some mages whose power is fueled by pain and by blood and by death, and those are the hell mages. And one of them is one of my protagonists. I've got basically a happy psychopath and a very nervous cleric go on an adventure together in this book, because my other protagonist, his power is fueled by light and purity and goodness and boring stuff like that. Okay. And so it's a fun dynamic to work with.
Tell us about the other books that you've written. The Adventures, I was going to say Doggy Girl, but it's a Dog Girl and Sidekick.
Dog Girl, yes. So it's my first baby, and so I'm always going to love it. It's a bit of a juvenile book. Like, looking back on it, I wish the editing was not as great as I wish it could be. And as much as I love that cover, I know that it does not come off as well as it could on the print. Would you believe it if I said that the same artist did both of my covers?
Totally different. Different style, everything's.
It is. She was only just getting into digital art at the time that I asked her. She's one of my oldest friends, that I asked her to do the cover for Dog Girl and Sidekick. Yeah. And so, like, she painted that original watercolor and then scanned it into the computer and fiddled with it a little bit. And so the original print is beautiful, but it really is not quite what a cover, what the Heretic cover is, shall we say. Okay. But Dog Girl and Sidekick is a superhero coming of age story. It's set in a college. It's essentially set in the college town that I did my undergraduate in. And so that was really fun. You know, names are changed, but working within a geography that I really knew because I lived in that town for 4 years was a lot of fun when I was writing it. You've got a college student who accidentally discovers the secret identity of her town's, not the superhero, but the sidekick. And the sidekick kind of draws her deeper and deeper into this world of superheroes and sidekicks and vendettas and the work that they do in the background, basically. So like I say, I love it. I love the story. It's my first book, and so it's always going to have a special place in my heart. And there was at one point a sequel planned. I don't know how much is going to happen with that. Okay. It's been a few years.
Is that hidden away in another spreadsheet?
Yes, it is tucked away on another spreadsheet. You're not wrong. I'm not good at Excel, but I do use a spreadsheet every once in a while.
I'm just looking at the books behind you. They're not distracted at all. They look very sort of educational. Are they sort of textbooks? Are they? Is that fiction?
So this is a combination. I've got an entire wall of books, and we're kind of on the pretty corner. So I've got my pretty copies of various classics here. This is Ernest Hemingway's first 49 short stories. Then I've got my very small medieval section, Edmund Spenser's The Fairy Queen.
Heavy reading.
Heavy reading, yes. I mean, I'm a English major through and through, and so I read a lot in a very wide variety. So like I say, I've got my classics, I've got some historical stuff, I've just got a bunch of, this is my creative writing instruction, how to write a book books at the back behind me. It's just kind of a mishmash. It's one of those things that, like, it's organized in my head, but I know that if anyone looks at it, they're going to say, what the heck is going on here?
Back to my own bookshelf. If I tidy mine up, I haven't got a clue where things are. It's like in a controlled mess.
Oh, I know where everything is. It's just that no one else would be able to find anything with my organization. And that's the way I like it, so it's fine.
Okay, so while we're still talking about your books and what you've got behind you there, what do you enjoy reading? What fiction do you enjoy reading? And anyway, tell us a bit
Lord. about... what do I enjoy reading? Anything. I hate to be that person who's like, I'll read anything, but I really will. Right now, I've got a friend's book. A wonderful Ukrainian author named Anton In has just come out with I, Jesus Rockstar, which is like Jesus Christ comes back to Earth, but he gets zapped into the body of this hedonistic rock star. And he's trying to figure out what on earth is going on and how to be Christ while also maintaining this guy's identity, basically. And it's crazy and it's philosophical and it's weird, and I'm very happy for Anton. I know that this has been a pet project of his for a very long time that got sadly disrupted by, global events. So I'm really happy to be reading it. It's really interesting to me. It's nothing that I would have picked up for myself, but I'm really glad that he hit me up and said, hey, I've done this thing, I've been working on this thing, would you like to read it? And so I've got that going, and I just finished a book by Tony DeBajo, who writes in the African mythology, like the Yoruba myths specifically, with the what are they called? The Orisha are the African pantheon of gods. And so it's warriors and gods and these gods that I don't really know, because of course I was raised with the Western gods, with the Greek gods and the Norse gods and that sort of thing. And so that's fascinating to read, and these battles and mythologies that I'm half aware of. And then I've got like a history of stand-up comedy in the United States also going right now. Is a nonfiction book that I'm really enjoying. And I do not remember the name of that author to save my life. But that's fascinating, like the way that the mob has been involved in comedy in the United States since basically the beginning. Because you would have a comedy in your you would have a comedian in your speakeasy to keep the crowd entertained while the band is changing. And your speakeasy was run by the mob during Prohibition. And then when Prohibition gets repealed and alcohol is no longer illegal, it's still run by the mob and it's still got a comedian in it. And then you start moving into other aspects of comedy, whether it's managing your comedians or being a producer for your comedians, or building other bigger theaters for comedians to play in, or running casinos down in Miami Beach where your comedians are playing, or eventually running Vegas where comedians are playing. And so that aspect of it is amazing to me. So I'm sorry, that's a very long-winded way of saying that I'll read anything. Put it in front of me, I'll read it. Yeah.
And they're purely for pleasure, I hope, and not doing book reviews on them, are you?
So the comedians is purely for pleasure. Tony and Anton, I am writing reviews for them for Rosie's book review blog. It's just a side effect of being a part of the Rosie Amber's book reviewers, is that I get to read these really interesting things that I wouldn't necessarily have picked out for myself. That she gives us a list of things and you just kind of go through and you say, yeah, sure, that one sounds interesting. Even if I wouldn't have necessarily picked it up in a bookstore. And so that's been fun. Yeah.
On your excellent website, talking about reviews, there is a lot of reviews on there, and it's mainly about your connection with the Rosie Amber book reviews. So can you tell us any more about that?
So Rosie Amber runs a wonderful book review and gardening blog called Rosie Amber Reviews. And she is one of the top book bloggers in the UK, actually. I got connected with her back in 2020 when Heretic was in process, and I was looking for ways to kind of get my name out there, do a little more publicity for it than I had done for Dogg and Sidekick. And so I contacted her about getting my book reviewed, and she was full up at the time, but said that if I wanted to become one of her reviewers, I could be plugged into this community. And so I did, and I have enjoyed it immensely. She has been wonderful to work with. She does a wonderful job of vetting these different books and bringing us a real variety. There's a whole slew of us. I think there's about 20 of us, I'm not totally sure, who just, like I say, scroll through her list, and her list is changing every couple of weeks or so, and pick a book. We contact these authors, we get a copy, we review it, read it in our own time, write a review, and then she'll post them first on her blog, and then I've started posting my own reviews on my own blog. And so yeah, that's been a fun and interesting process, getting to see that side of things, learning how to write a review, a good review for these different authors in a variety of genres. And so
cool.
Yeah.
I went through a period. I was working with a company called Sabotage, with their own website. They run a book reviewing service. But what I found was I was delighted getting free books, first look pre-publication. But what I found was that it was a bit of an effort. I enjoy reading anyway, but I felt as though it was sort of forced. Instead of enjoying the read, I was looking for, any highlights of what I enjoyed or what I didn't like. And I don't like to criticize authors. I think I'd rather, tell them privately rather than posting it a review, if you know what I mean. But I found as though I had to stop it in the end because it was spoiling my enjoyment of reading for the reading's sake.
Yeah. I enjoy it, and Rosie does not post anything below a 3. So if there is something that I truly did not enjoy, like I can just tell her, and she'll say, if you want to post a review on Goodreads or on Amazon under your own name, that's fine, but I'm not going to post it on my blog, which is fair. Like there's no need to if someone writes a crap book, there's no need to tear them down because of it. Publicly, at least, certainly not on the platform, because she does have a pretty big platform that she has. So there is that aspect of it, but I think it's the academic in me, because I've studied literature in this way, that I enjoy going through and picking out phrases and references and seeing what there is behind, what I think the author might have behind them when they're writing it. So like, because in our little peek behind the magic, folks, in the pre-interview, the kind of set of questions, you mentioned my reviews. And so I went back through and I read a few of them. I was like, oh Lord, what if he asked me about this? And I was reading one that I did on a fluffy historical romance, basically. And the way that at that point I had apparently been reading Quinn, what's her name? Julia Quinn, I think, who did the Bridgerton books. And so I made a comparison between that author and the Bridgerton author, the Bridgerton books. And, that this was a little bit sweeter than that. It's not quite as spicy, but it's obviously not as staid as Jane Austen might be if you're a purist with your period work, that she had done that she had read her history, and that this was really sweet, that there were stakes, but if you pick up a book that has a pretty blonde in a period dress on the cover, like, what you're getting, basically. But that this was a book that was about the journey, not necessarily about the destination. We all know there's going to be a happy ending and a wedding at the end, but what gets us there? And so rereading that, I was like, oh yeah, I do remember this bit of reading this book vaguely, and I remember looking at these different references. I've got a friend who actually studies chick lit, like that is what her PhD is in, and so I talked to her about it. I know, it's crazy. Shoot, Marion Keyes is who
huge
she's
market,
specifically.
It's a huge market.
Massive market that does not get nearly enough attention. It's getting more attention now. But like Marion Keyes is who she's doing her doctoral work on. And who on earth would have thought of that? But anyway, that I talked with her about this kind of book, about these books where the ending can be presupposed. And she says, yeah, but people have comfort in that. A lot of people find comfort in knowing that there's going to be a happily ever after at the end of it. And the safety of that, and that there's nothing wrong with having a book that makes you feel safe in a way. And so like learning to appreciate these different genres, these different styles in this way, I enjoy that aspect of reviewing, but I can see how it could turn into work after a while. Certainly.
That's what I found. Tell us about your publisher, Dreaming Big Publications, a small press with a focus on mental health education and advocacy. How did you connect with this publisher?
Okay, so that's actually my publisher for Dog Girl and Sidekick. I've got a different publisher for Heretic, but for Dreaming Big, I had a friend who was doing a master's in creative writing, and not a master's, good Lord, a master's in publishing. I did the master's in creative writing. Sawyer did the master's in publishing. I should remember all of this, but did a master's in publishing, and she did an internship with Dreaming Big. And so she was really excited about them. She got in contact with me. She said, I know you've been working on this book. I think I can get it seen by the right people. It's a very small press. And so the right people are, I know, I mean, it's a tiny press. The right people is like her boss. Basically, there were, 2 or 3 people total there. But she sent me their contact details. I sent them Dog Girl and Sidekick. They liked it. There were some internal complications with the company, some illness at the higher levels, shall we say. And so Dog Girl and Sidekick got kicked around a little bit. They have interns do a lot of their work, which is very cool and very valuable. But I was just in the early days of my PhD when Dog Girl and Sidekick was in process, so I was not keeping as close an eye on the editing as I could have, on the typesetting as I could have. And like I say, some fairly glaring things slipped through. But they were lovely to work with. They were very kind. And I do think that they are doing important work with their mental health advocacy, focus on publishing for that. I'm just not sure that Dog Girl and Sidekick was necessarily the right book for them, which is a thing for all young authors to consider as you're trying to find your first publisher, is that, is this publisher right for you? I had a connection and in with them, and so they are who I went with. And for a first publishing experience, I learned a lot. I can definitely say that. Okay. Heretic is published by Wild Wolf Press. Wild Wolf Publications, Wild Wolf Press. Wild Wolf Press, I think, is their name. Their tagline is like literature with teeth, which I really liked, because Heretic does have a bit more bite in a lot of ways. And I found them through this reviewing, actually. I reviewed one of their books and really liked it for one of their authors. And so the publisher got in contact and was like, hey, do you want to read some more from this series? And so I read some more from that series. And about the time I was finishing up my draft of Heretic that I was ready to start sending off, and I got back in touch with them and said, hey, I've got this thing. And I think it might fit your publishing style. I think that it might fit more in with your existing catalog. And so I worked with them then for Heretic and had a lovely experience with them as well. I've been very lucky with my publishers in that regard. At the very least, they have been kind to me. Yes.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're lucky. I mean, some people are lucky to get one publisher. They find it difficult and they end up self-publishing. And you get two.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
It's, like all businesses, it's knowing people, it's making connections. And so you're right. I have been very lucky in that regard. I really have.
When you're writing a book, then where do you get your ideas from and your story and your characters? Do they automatically generate themselves in your head as you're going along the street thinking, or do you make notes, or in a book, or how do you get there?
So, bits and pieces, like I've, like I think many authors, I've started writing a lot of books. Like I've got, 10 different first 3 chapters of 10 different stories saved on a hard drive somewhere. Heretic and Dog Girl both just kind of kept me past that initial 3. I've written 3 chapters and now it's out of my system stage. And so, that's a lovely thing. And then once I'm really into a book, once I've started it, I start taking notes on just about anything. Like I keep a small pad. I truly am one of those wake up in the middle of the night people and be like, oh, that's an idea. And so I scribble notes down on my little pad. I type notes to myself anytime that I'm writing a book. I'll have, the chapters from the beginning to where it is that I'm writing. And then the next 3 pages are all notes of what I want to happen later on in the story, or things that I've cut from earlier that I think could be worked back in other places, that sort of thing. And so I keep it all on one Word document. I've mentioned my spreadsheets. I've got spreadsheets of my timeline. I've got, while I'm working on the sequel to Heretic, I've got my copy of Heretic here beside me, and it's full of notes and sticky notes. And I don't know if that's going to show up on the screen, but scribbles in the back and notes that are tucked into it, things to be integrated there. And so back when I was in Cork, if I had an idea while I was walking, because of course I walked everywhere in Ireland, I always had my phone on me. I would take voice notes. I would record while I was walking, and I'm sure looked very crazy while I was doing that. So I am not any one specific style of note taking. I'll take notes on whatever's near at hand, and then go from there when I get back to my computer, back to my Word document, so that I can add it in.
Very practical.
Makes sense to me. That's how I do it. As it came into my head, I'd have to make notes, whether it's on a piece of paper, on a phone, record it. Yeah, that makes sense to me.
The back of a receipt, like I am the world's worst. There have been times when I've had to stop myself that the only thing I had on hand was like a piece of homework that a student had handed in. I'm like, nope, can't write notes on that. Can't do that. Need to find something else.
What were your ambitions as a writer? Is this, as well, most writers we speak to, their dream is a television or a film company, to get hold of one of your titles? Is that your ambition?
That's not an active ambition, shall we say. Like, if it fell onto a producer's desk and they said, this, I want Netflix to make this series, then I would be all for it. But the idea of going out and actually finding that producer sounds exhausting to me. I've, as an indie author, like, I don't have an agent to kind of push for these things, to help me with these things, and so that sounds like a lot of work. Like, I want to sell books. I want to teach classes on romantic literature and like 19th century poetry, and write my books, and go to do readings and have fun with them. I'm doing a reading here in a couple of weeks at a local bookshop, attend literary festivals. Like, I don't necessarily, I'm not actively hunting the Netflix deal that I think a lot of authors are out there looking for. Like I say, that sounds like a lot of work. I don't know if I'm up for that.
Well, fair enough.
Yeah, it's one of those, isn't it? If it turns up on your lap, you'll take it.
If the right person is out there watching that says, yes, I want that movie, like, I'm here for it, you can contact me, the website, like, definitely we can talk, but I'm just not going to go out and find you. You're going to have to find me. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Finally, from me then, what advice would you give to someone who's a brand new writer, who's going to write a book for the first time, and they come to you and say, where do we start? What do we do? What's the best approach?
Okay, so if you're brand new, this is your first one ever, write something fun for you. Like, when it stops, it gets to the point where it stops being fun on your first book, then that's a point where you should probably put it down for a while. For me, there are points where it's this Heretic sequel is not necessarily fun. There'll be like a few page stretch that I'm just like, this is not what I want to do. But I've got a dream and a deadline and a sequel that I've been promising a lot of people that I really care about for a while. And so I've got more people counting on it. When you're on your first book, you're doing that for you. And so make sure that that is fun for you, that you are enjoying the process all the way through, that you nurture it, and know that when you finish it, if you finish it, when you finish it, that is a monumental achievement. Whether you publish or not, whether you find the agent, the publisher, you end up self-publishing, just finishing the novel, 99% of people who start novels don't finish them. And so finishing it alone is an incredible achievement, and you should be incredibly proud of yourself for that.
Yeah, that sounds like great advice to me.
Does indeed. Yeah.
Take note. Write your second book.
I know, I need to. Jenny, as I mentioned, it looks like time's caught up with us. It's absolutely flown by. But it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you. This has been wonderful.
Indeed, excellent. So, well, let's keep in touch as we have been. But for now, hope you have a lovely rest of the weekend.
Thank you. And y'all as well.
Thank
Enjoy your, Saturday evenings there.
Yeah. It is, 5:30 on a Saturday evening here. So,
the witching hour. Sounds like time to get things started.
It does. But for now, Jenny, cheers.
Yeah, thank you. Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you, guys.
Great. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.